holy soil of DuBois. DuBois' soul is here, he's buried here, his wife as well. So DuBois is seeing what we're doing now. Thank you so much. I will now do the introduction very briefly, but he's going to do more when he's done with the lecture. We have a man who I would guess is the only person here wearing dreadlocks. Oh, sorry. Yeah. But who is sitting before you and wearing dreadlocks? Yes. And he has this huge smoke. He looks like a warrior, a real African warrior. I guess he has some charms as well. If you shoot him now, I bet you the bullets will just penetrate through him and go somewhere and he will still stay alive. Nice. He is in the presence of Dr. Campbell Obadele. He is a man of many parts. I will not try to dissect him now. He's going to do dissection by himself. He's a lecturer at the premier university in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. Sorry, the University of Ghana, Legon. You know, I love Kwame Nkrumah so much, so anytime, any day, I want to associate him with something. Yes, Dr. Obadele Campbell, these are your beautiful guests from the United States of America. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you say, yeah, all right. So what I'm going to do, I was asked to speak on Pan-Afrikanism, and usually when people think of Pan-Afrikanism, they think about the modern day form. And what we're going to go into is the ancient African origins of Pan-Afrikanism. Now when we say ancient, how old do you think we're talking about?
Most ancient.
Centuries, you think?
Since creation.
Let's at least go to millennia. So we're going to take you back about 5,000 years. Now when we talk about Pan-Afrikanism, we're talking about African people coming together, usually under one political umbrella, one economic umbrella, so forth and so on. So sometimes we think, oh, that's just a recent idea, like we just started thinking about that maybe last century or so. But we'll show some counter examples and give you textual evidence. So my talk today is dealing with the ancient African origins of Pan-Afrikanism, a textual analysis. And you'll notice that we're spelling Africa with a K. Now if you look at various African languages, anytime they write this down, they usually use a K. That is in English that you usually see it expressed with a C. So if you look at the Kiswahili language, if you look at the Akan language, if you look at the Yoruba language, anytime that they're writing this, they write it with a K. So as part of our decolonizing, we're also going to follow in that. So in the null hypothesis, this is what is generally accepted and understood. Pan-Africanism is often regarded as a modern phenomenon and a direct response to colonialism, neo-colonialism, and enslavement, neo-enslavement. It's usually associated with the coining of the term Pan-Africanism, right? And in English, and then perhaps retroactively applied to those immediately preceding that coinage. And it's usually tied to Henry Sylvester Williams out of Trinidad in the Pan-African Conference of 1900. And they said it was organized to protect and promote the interests of people of African blood or descent, right? So what we're going to go into is our own hypothesis is that the concept and practice of unifying African, which is black people, politically, economically, socially, is an ancient African imperative. Now we're going to go into this in various places. So you see this in Ouagadougou. That's the indigenous name of Ghana. So even the name of the land that we're in right now, Ghana, the original, what we talk about, ancient Ghana, that wasn't the name. That's what the Arab traders and others who came called it. That originally was called Ouagadougou. Nyani, that was the original name of what's referred to as ancient Mali. Gao, that's ancient Songhai. Kush, so forth and so on. But specifically Kemet. How many people have ever heard that term Kemet before? Very good, good. Now when we say Kemet, we're talking about the land of black people, and we'll come and show you exactly that. And what this is, the original foreign policy thrust was to integrate more African, which is black people, into Kemet. And there was little or no interest in incorporating or integration with the Amu, which is the indigenous term for the Asiatics. Now when I say Kemet, I want you to say Pan-Africanism. This is going to be slightly interactive. Kemet! 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 Very good, let's continue. So according to John Henrik Clarke, I'm not the first person to make the case that Kemet is Pan-Africanism, was a case of Pan-Africanism. So this is back in 1994, Prof. Emeritus John Henrik Clarke. Has anyone ever heard that name before? Very good. We have a good audience so far. So he says, when I look back at the historical role and the historical manifestations of Pan-Africanism, I deal with the first organized society in the Nile Valley, when the people of the South and the people of the North, the Upper and Lower Nile, came together to run a country now known to the world as Egypt. The unification of the Upper Nile and Lower Nile was an act of Pan-Africanism. So he's making this point. What we're going to do is not only make the point, but show you the actual texts that were carved into stone by your African ancestors that show exactly this. Kemet? I'm going to see who's paying attention. You have to stay on your toes. People cannot fall asleep in my lectures because we do call and response. Kemet? Very good. Let's continue. Now after him, Prof. Kwame Nantambu made a similar point. He says, when the Pharaoh Aha, also known as Narmer and renamed Menes by the Greeks, he was the first historic ruler of the first dynasty of Kemet, united Upper and Lower Kemet into one nation, and located the capital city in Min-Nefer, later called Memphis by the Greeks. This was an act of Pan-African nationalism of the first order, the unification of the Upper Nile and the Lower Nile together as a whole to form one country under one ruled dynasty to be able to resist foreign aggression and invasion inter alia. So again, he's saying that Kemet is an example of Pan-Africanism, and also this is the very first state in the history of the entire world, so you can't get before this. So Kemet, Kemet, Kemet. Very good. Also, Aikwe Alma, a noted author born in what's now known as Ghana, he says, if Pan-Africanism is the ideal of Africans coming together in one polity, history presents earlier examples. Their ethos peaked in the unificatory ideologies that created Egypt thousands of years ago. So all of them are making this point. Kemet, Kemet, Kemet. Very good. So for us, we are going to give a definition of Pan-Africanism that's in alignment with the 1900 Conference of Pan-Africanism. So when they had the Pan-African Conference, they were talking about the unification of black people coming together to make sure we had one strong nation state to ensure our security in various places. They were talking about black people. So Pan-Africanism can be thought of as an aspiration towards and or the fulfillment of the unification of various African, which equals black people, along various dimensions, including but not limited to unification geopolitically, socioeconomically, cultural-linguistically, militarily, spirituality for self-preservation. And what they're doing is they're actually building black power. Kemet? Very good. So it's rooted in a common history, ancestry, and destiny descendants based on common genotype, phenotype, and allegiance. It can be intranational and international. Kemet? Very good. So what we find is that there are similar circumstances for both ancient Pan-Africanism and modern Pan-Africanism. In both cases, you had black people who were surrounded or had non-Africans right on their doorstep who were very hostile to them. So Kemet is located very close to southwestern Asia, and in their own text, the Lamentations of Ipuwer, they talk about when these Eurasians come in, they bring destruction, they destroy, they terrorize the hearts of farmers, they do all of these things. So it made sense for them to say, let's unite around what we have in common. Kemet? Very good. And we find a similar thing with modern day Pan-Africanism. You have people who are, black people who are being lynched, raped, murdered by these same Eurasians who then went under the name of Americans, Brazilians, so forth and so on. So it made sense for them too to say, let's come together on the basis of what we have in common. Kemet? And this is what we're showing. When you have something in common, it makes sense to unite around that. And this can be done to great effect. So you see buffalo that would otherwise be hunted by the lion, but when they decide to come together, then they can now put the lion off to flight, right? So this is what we could call pan-buffaloism, right? It only makes sense to unite when you have common enemies, common oppressors. Now, who are the Kemet you? These are the black people. This is the very founder of Kemet. So when you talk about ancient Egypt, he looks like a young Mike Tyson, right? Kemet! And that's Narmer. Now, I was looking up an article by Ogden Goelet, and he said Kemet and other terms for their land. And for him, he said terms referring to Egypt alone, such as Kemet and Tameri, ironically enough, occur neither in the titularies or any other type of text during the Old Kingdom. So I read that and I said, I don't think that this is a very good researcher, so within 5 minutes, I found exactly what he said did not exist in the Old Kingdom, and I'll show it to you. And there's a proverb where they say, "O ntojua lojuari," and this is in Yoruba, and it translates to what the eye is looking for is what it will see. So if you're not looking for it, oh, it didn't exist. But within 5 minutes of me looking for it, guess what? I found it. And this is the text. This is the Kemet, right? And it says, "You stand at the fore of those of black land as the Apis." So when you're saying Kemet, you're actually saying basically land of the blacks. And this is in the pyramid text, again from the Old Kingdom of Mary Ra Pepi, right? Now, when you have oftentimes non-African scholars, we could say white scholars, usually they prefer not to say Kemet has anything to do with black people. They say, oh, they mean that the soil is black. Because black people have never done anything. It must mean that the soil is black. Now, this makes no sense, but we'll come back to that point. So this is by J.P. Allen. He says, black land, a term for the cultivable soil along the banks of the Nile and in the delta where most of Egypt's population live. So again, you have non-African scholars who are seeing what they want to see. Kemet? Kemet? Kemet. Good. Now, even if they wanted to say that they're only referring to the soil, the people themselves say that they were made out of the soil. In their own mythology, they say that they are made out of this black soil. So again, what you see here is Khnum. And in their mythology, they say that each person is made from that black soil on a potter's wheel. So they say another hymn to Khnum Re, God of the potter's wheel, who settled the land by his handiwork. So even if they're trying to get out of saying that they're black people, the black people themselves are saying we're made out of this black soil. So now what do you have to say? Kemet? Kemet? Kemet! Very good. We have someone who looks very tired, and we're going to have to wake her up because people are not allowed to sleep when I talk. Kemet! 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 Jet lagged though you may be, no one is allowed to go to sleep when I am speaking because I'm teaching you some information that's very, very important. You may not even realize how important it is until 10 years down the line. Kemet! Kemet! And if anyone wants to fall asleep, I will call you out and make you come and do a dance like these people. Good job, by the way. Very good. So in this, they actually use the term black mud. So as they're saying that what they're made out of, they're still saying that they're black people because they're made out of that which is black. So you find this in this text, the Ebers Papyrus, Amat Kemet. So here you see this in hieratic, and then you see it in what's called hieroglyphs, right? So Amat Kemet, right? So this is exactly what we're dealing with, black people. So even they themselves called themselves black people. White scholars came behind and said, no, they were just saying that the land is black. It made no sense. But even if they tried to go in that direction, we still caught them with our own understanding of what we are made out of. We'll continue. So again, here you see this Kemet you. These are the people of the land of the blacks. And here you see a determinative for a village with a crossroads. So anytime you see this coming at the end of a word, you know it has something to do with a settlement of people. Now when they're saying Kim, they're talking about that which is black. And it's the strongest word for that which is black. So Kemet, the black land, as they say. Now how did the people of Kemet depict themselves? Kemet? 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 Wonderful. Very good. That another term that they had for themselves was Remech. They translate this as men, mankind, Egyptians. Again, Egyptian, that's a Greek term. So we always prefer what did the black people themselves call themselves. Right? When you say Egyptian, all of this information is lost. And that's intentional. Again, we see this Remech, men, mankind, Egyptian, so forth and so on. Now, what you just saw in the dictionary is how we depicted ourselves. Now, I don't think we have anyone this black in the room. But this is how they depicted themselves. And you see the same thing that you saw in the dictionary. This is a photograph. Remech, man, woman, plural. Right? Then you see it here again. Remech, man, woman, plural. And this is how they depicted themselves. Right? Kemet? Kemet? Not like a Hollywood movie, Gods of Egypt. So when you see them come out with these movies, what they're doing is that they are trying to kill your ancestors. So the police are there to kill those who are living, and then these white scholars are there to kill those who have already died, so that you will never know that these are your ancestors, carving into stone, so that you will know that these are your ancestors, practicing Pan-Afrikanism. Kemet! 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 Very good. Now this is a reproduction of that same photograph, and what's important about this is here, the Remech, the people of Kemet, they show themselves as two different types. The one here and the one here. Now, also these are the Nubians. These are the ones who even the white scholars are willing to say are black. But what you'll notice is that they depict Remech here the exact same way that they depict the Nehesi, which are the Nubians here, right? So they were very clear on who they were and who they were trying to unite with, right? Now these are the Amu. These are the people of southwestern Eurasia, right? I don't like the term Middle East because I don't know where the Middle West is, or the Middle North, or the Middle South, right? So this is southwestern Eurasia. Europe and Asia are not two different continents. Look at the map. Even though in school they tell you they're different, this is just one big landmass. So we have to get beyond the lies that are right in front of your eyes. So these are the Eurasians of southwestern Eurasia. Now when people say we are the Hebrews, we are the this, we are the that, this is how your own ancestors depicted those people. That's not you. Pick yourself out of the lineup. This is you, this is you, this is you, this is you if you're black. If you are not, then this is you, and then this is you. These are those who had invaded North Africa, called the Chimhu. We'll continue. Kemet! Kemet! Here we see another line drawing coming from the walls of a temple, and here it shows the Nehesi, and it says Medu Jedit Nehesi, and it's saying words spoken by the Nubian Punt of Punt. Now when we're talking about Punt, you're talking about what we now refer to as Somalia, Eritrea, that coastal area. So this is the Nubian, and he's depicted the exact same as all the Remech, the people of Kemet, right? So again, they're telling you that we know who we are, and we know who other black people are. Kemet! 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 Very good. Got to keep you on your toes, you know. Right? And again, you find all these texts. He came and ruled the black land. But when you see non-Africans who do the translations, oftentimes they don't do it well. Now, sometimes it's because of ideological reasons. Other reasons it's because of incompetence. But here you see Kemetsu with a woman and a man. Kemet with a woman and a man. But here they're translating it as came and ruled the black land. When you don't have that determinative of a crossroads inside of a circle, we're not talking about land, we're not talking about settlement, we're talking about black people, right? So the better translation would be he came and ruled the black people, he came and nourished the black people. Now, I'm not sure if anyone has gotten a chance to learn how to read Medunecha, but this is exactly what you're seeing. People, and then this is a plural, right? Kemet! Kemet! Kemet. How many people know how to read and write Medunecha? That is what they call ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Of course, right? Now, for those who, this is the very first writing system on the history of the entire planet Earth. There was no writing anywhere in the world before this, 3400 BCE, right? Now, it's also the longest written tradition of any language on the face of the entire planet Earth. 3,000 years of history in this one language, right? 3,000 plus years of history in this one language. So you may start to ask yourself, well, how come we don't learn this? Whereas you may go to University of Ghana and you can study Greek there, you can study Latin there, you can study Arabic, you can study Spanish, you can study anything except for the language that your black African ancestors invented. Why is that? Once you come to understand the intentionality, then you'll understand the intellectual warfare that we are engaged in. Kemet! Let's continue. I'm saying that's intentional that we don't know how to read that, but we're doing something about that. Again, we see Kim as the word black, Kemet, the black land, as they say, this comes from the dictionary. Kemet, they like to say Egyptians. Well, if this is black land, why can't we say black people? Because if they said that, guess what? You're going to start knowing exactly who you are, right? Kemet! So African equals black people. Now the Egyptians, as they saw themselves, this is Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophile Obenga from 1974 UNESCO conference, where they blew the lid off of this, right? So he says the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, Kemet, the Negroes, or black people literally. This is the strongest term existing in the Pharaonic tongue to indicate blackness. This word is the etymological origin of the well-known root Kemet, right? He says it is a remarkable circumstance that the ancient Egyptians should never have had the idea of applying these qualificatives to the Nubians and other populations of Africa to distinguish them from themselves. So they never referred to anyone else based on, well, y'all are black and we're not. They're saying that we are the black people, and they were always trying to bring in more Nubians from further into the south because y'all are also black people. There was little to no interest in bringing in anyone else. We continue. Now, this is Steve Biko. I want you to understand blackness in this sense. Kemet? Kemet. Very good. So he says the fact that we are all not white does not necessarily mean that we are all black. So you have people who are actually black, but if you ask them, they'll say, no, I'm American. They can be blacker than 1,000 midnights. They will say, no, why can't you just see me as a human being, right? We have this still going on. So the people of Kemet didn't call anyone else Kemet unless they came into the allegiance that, guess what? Whatever else you call yourself, that has to be subsumed under the fact that we're all Kemet black people. Otherwise, we call you by what you call yourself. Jet Nubians, Wawat Nubians, Kao Nubians, whatever you want to call yourself. Only when you understand that, yes, we are all Kemet, that's when we refer to you as Kemet. But he says, black consciousness is in essence the realization of the black man of the need to rally together with his brothers around the cause of their operation, the blackness of their skin, and to operate as a group in order to rid themselves of the shackles that bind them to perpetual servitude. So again, what he's talking about in modern times is what we saw in ancient times, and we'll give you the text to show you that. So what we're talking about is genotype, we're talking about phenotype, and we're also talking about allegiance, right? Because again, you could be blacker than a black cat at midnight, but you may not see yourself as such. Oh, I'm English, I want a little tea and crumpets, yeah? Right? Whereas the police know exactly who you are. They say, bam, right? In case you were confused, we're not. So this is in the genes too. So this is what's called solute carrier family 24, member 5, and it's a protein that's associated with skin color. Now the original variation is what you have in black people, and it's called alanine. You have a mutation to what's called threonine, and that's what you find for non-Africans. And this is a major determining factor of skin color. Now this is the world right side up. So here's Africa, right? Now in Kemet, they always saw south is up. The very first map in the history of the entire world is the map of Amennacht. And they always said south is up, east is on the left, and west is on the right, lower is in the north. So if you see any map that goes against that, you have to ask them, why did you turn it around? My African ancestors invented map making, so what made you get up and decide to put north on top, Europe on top? But that's not why I'm showing you this. I'm showing you this to show the blue is where you have the threonine mutation, and the yellow is where you have the original alanine, right? So all of this goes to, and what you'll see is that this matches very well with the global distribution of black people. So now when we're talking about Kemet, I don't want you to only think about ancient Kemet. I want you to also think about modern Kemet, where all of these black people are throughout the entire world, right? All of this is the land of black people in modern times. Now, ancient Kemet was going all the way to here, right? So Kemet, as black people, when you see this determinative, it lets you know it has something to do with people. When you see this one, it lets you know it has something to do with a settlement. Kemet! Kemet! Kemet. Very good. Now again, just as I said, this is a Turin papyrus map. Now why do they call it the Turin papyrus map out of Turin, Italy? Because they always name things out of the places where they steal them and take them to. Or they name them out of the thieves who took them. Right? So that's what they call, we would prefer the papyrus map of Amennacht, the son of Ipuy, who was a scribe. This is going back 3,160 years ago. south up orientation showing map to mine's 15-kilometer stretch. This is considered to be the very first map in the history of the world, right? It's not just a drawing on a cave. This is showing you how to get to a place. It's doing what a map would do, right? And again, in Kemet, the word Iabit, east, Yabi, left, Iminet, west, Imin, right, Resut, south, that's upper, Tamhu, that's lower, that's in the north. So again, that's the orientation. If you have a different orientation, that may mean that you're upside down, which is intentionally so, right? Now also, King Tutankhamun, has anyone ever heard of King Tut? Right? So in 2012, DNA Tribes did a genetic study where they saw that King Tut's highest genetic relatives are in southern Africa, the African Great Lakes, that's talking about Rwanda, Uganda area, tropical West African, that's where we are right now, Horn of Africa, Sahel, so forth and so on. So all of the relatives are, guess where? Where all the other black people are still to this day, just as your ancestors called themselves black people. They did the same thing for Ramesses III, right? And this is him depicted as a black person. Now notice that they never like to show you the actual photographs from there. They like to do reproductions and cartoons and drawings and movies starring, Americans with white accents. We don't like that. So his closest relatives are in the African Great Lakes region, Southern Africa, tropical West Africa, Horn Africa, Sahel, so forth and so on, right? Just to let you know that, yes, we're talking about Kemet, Kemet, Kemet. Now there are some who don't like to use the term Pan-Afrikanism because it's a backdoor to get everyone else who happens to be in Africa into the equation. So if you are a Dutch Boer in South Africa who's stolen that land, they'll say, oh, Pan-African, that's you too. You're here in Africa, so blah. Or the Arabs, who are the very first imperialists, because if you notice that Kemet does not look black to this day, you have to ask yourself about the invasions of the Hyksos, the Assyrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, and so forth and so on. We know that those invasions happened, and that's what's driven you down to what we now call Sub-Saharan Africa. But when you look at any time we conceptualize Africa in our own languages, it's always saying land of black people, just like Kemet. So in Chi, and we have some Chi speakers here who can also verify, Obibini, that is the word that we use for African, but the root is coming from black, Bibi, to be black. You have Abibifo, this is now plural, where still the word for Africans is still rooted in the word for black. When you want to talk about Africa, Abibimine, again you see the Bibi, that's the black part. And anytime you're talking about anything black, it's interchangeable with the word for African. Kemet? Kemet? Kemet. Very good. Also in Yoruba, the word Adulawo is coming from the root du, which is to be black. Ile Adulawo is a word for Africa. So anytime we conceptualize it in our own languages. Now, the problem is that we're speaking English. So sometimes we'll say, oh, well, we're not black, we're African. Then other times we'll say, no, we're not African, we're black. But if you speak your own language, it's redundant, right? If you're black, you're African. If you're African, you're black. Case closed. Kemet? Found the same thing in Bambara, Farafin, black person, Farafina, land of black people. That's the way they refer to Africa in the Bambara language. Again, anytime you do this in your own language. And Wolof, Nikunyul is the word person who is black, person, human of black. That's African. Real Nikunyul is Africa, right? Land of those who are black. We can do the same, we can do this all day. Kikongo, Ndombe, this is the word for black person. Mandombe and Sia Bandombe is the word for African. You're talking about land of black people. That's how you speak this land, Africa, in any of these languages. Now, none of these people are talking about the soil. In Chi, when you say Abidimine, are you going on and say, oh, well, the land is black? No. You're saying the people are black, therefore we're going to say this is the land of those people, right? And then also in Medunex, the very first instance, Kemetiu, here you see the black, and here you see the people. Here you see the black Kemet, and here you see the land. Anytime we do this in our own language, we don't have a problem. Kemet? Kemet? Kemet. Very good. And again, this is a photograph of how we depicted ourselves. And I see some ladies in the audience who look just like your ancestors here, right? Ancestresses here. And this wasn't only black people. Anytime the Greeks, when they say Ethiopia, land of burnt faces, they weren't saying, well, the soil is black, so let's call it Ethiopia. They're saying the people are black, this is the land of those people, right? Same thing in Latin, the word Niger comes from black, it means black. Now they're not saying let's call it Niger. Same thing in Arabic, when they say Sudan, where the modern day nation of Sudan comes from, they say Bilad as-Sudan, land of the blacks. None of them are talking about the soil. And here you see the ancient ones, here you see the modern ones. They are twins. Come in. Come in. Come in. Very good. Now, when we talk about the meaning of being black, there's a quick story I want to share with you. Come in. It's the hyena's tail. Now, what was the significance to the people themselves of calling themselves black? When you say black, you meant completeness, finality, perfection. That was the concept of blackness. It was always, we are black, and that is a good thing. The sun has made us black. Now, this is a story from the Bambara people where they say, once upon a time, Hyena went to the village shoemaker to ask him to make a leather box for her gree-gree amulet. However, Hyena was very concerned about what color the shoemaker would use to finish the job. So she asked the shoemaker, what color do you think I need? Which color do you think I need? Because I want the brightest color, but also I don't want a color that fades. Without waiting for the shoemaker's answer, Hyena started choosing colors for herself. She said, oh, well, what about red? She asked excitedly. Later on, replied the shoemaker, it will turn dark. Then the hyena asked, well, what about green? It will change too, the shoemaker responded. Then what about white, asked the hyena. If it gets wet and you know how you always like to run through the water, especially when someone is chasing you, it will be worse. The leather will get dirty and stained with dark spots. The shoemaker explained. Well, yellow is very bright. What about yellow, Hyena insisted. In the long run, the shoemaker told Hyena, all these colors will just turn black. Upon hearing this, Hyena, who had become rather exasperated, sniffed, well, why didn't you just tell me I needed to choose black in the first place? The shoemaker said, I couldn't tell you anything because you started being too choosy and so concerned about colors. That's why I did not have a chance to tell you that black, Bibi. Now this is a Songhai language out of Mali. It's the exact same word that they use here in Ghana. This is the connection. That black Bibi is the only everlasting color. So in the end, Hyena chose black for a gree-gree box. Aha, sighed the shoemaker. At last, this is a wise choice. The idea, feel free. Oh, feel free. Oh, yes. You don't want to do that. Thank you. Now, you find the same concept in ancient Kemet, where the word for conclusion, for completion, for to total up, to be complete. When you talk about black, think about all the colors added together. When you are complete, that is when you finally arrive at blackness. Kemet. And then also the reverence for the sun. They always talk about, the people, they used to worship the sun. Sun. Well, what's the main thing that the sun does to you but make you black? Right? So when you hear someone called Ramesses, he's saying born of the sun. He's saying this has made me so black. He's bragging about how black he is. Right? So the ruler was called Sa-Ra, which is son of the sun. Right? Kemet. 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 Very good. Now we're going to look at some of the texts, and because of time, we'll have to run through. Now, one of the best examples of ancient Pan-Afrikanism comes from Winnie. Now, Winnie was a general, and he says, when His Majesty took action against the Eurasian sand dwellers, he's talking about the same folks who are there in Egypt right now, these same Arab types. He says, when His Majesty took action against the sand dwellers, His Majesty made an army of many tens of thousands from Upper Kemet, from Yabu in the south to Medinit in the north, from Lower Kemet, from all the two sides of the house. So he's talking about bringing black people together in the face of a common enemy, these Eurasian sand dwellers, right? He says, other black people from Sejer and Kensedru, from Irjet Nubians, Majawut Nubians, Yam Nubians, Wawat Nubians, Kau Nubians, and from Chamaeland. So this is the very first Pan-African force in the history of the world, coming together to defend ourselves against a common enemy that we had, right? We continue. And he says, this army returned in safety. It had ravaged the sand dwellers' land. This army returned in safety. It had flattened the sand dwellers' land. This army returned in safety. It had sacked its strongholds. This army returned in safety. It had cut down its figs, its vines. This army returned in safety. It had thrown fire in all its mansions. It has slain its troops by many tens of thousands. So again, it goes on to say, His Majesty praised me for it beyond anything. His Majesty sent me to lead this army 5 times to attack the land of the sand dwellers as often as they rebelled with these troops. I acted so His Majesty praised me for it beyond anything. So we're looking at a textual analysis. What did my own African ancestors have to say about it? Right? Not what some modern day scholar says. What did they write down? This is why we need to learn the language of our ancestors. Right? Kemet? So now he comes again. He says, told there were marauders among these foreigners at the nose of Gazelle's head. Again, these Eurasian sand dwellers are on the attack again. He said, I crossed in ships with these troops. I made a landing at the back of the height of a mountain range to the north of the land of the sand dwellers, while half of this army was on the road. I came and caught them all and slew every marauder among them. His Majesty sent me to dig 5 canals in Upper Kemet and to build 3 barges and 4 towboats of acacia wood of Wawat. This is talking about Nubia. So now you have African people, black people coming together for economic reasons. He says, then the foreign rulers of the foreign lands of Irjet, Wawat, Yam, Meja, cut timber for them, right? So he's saying, not only did we come together to make war against our enemies, we came together to have economic ventures together, right? Now also we find this in Harkuf. He says, then His Majesty sent me a 3rd time to Yam. I went up on the nome of this oasis road. I found the ruler of Yam had gone up to Chimay land to smite the Chimay. He says, to the western nome of heaven, I went up after him and satisfied him so that he praised all the gods for the sovereign. So here you have these folks who were just coming together to fight. Now they're about to fight amongst each other. He came and he said, y'all got to squash that, right? Again, these are black people solving our own problems. We'll continue. And for the sake of time, we'll have to skip a few, but I do want you to get the general sense of various texts. Now the prophecies of Nefertiti, this is again from the Old Kingdom, from the court of Seneferu of the 4th dynasty, according to the text itself. And he says, the Amu, these are the Eurasians, they travel by their strength. They terrorize the hearts of those upon the harvest, farmers. They seize the oxen of plowing. So again, why are we taking action against these Eurasians? Kemet? Kemet? Kemet. Because they're terrorizing the people, the black people, just as they're still terrorizing the people, the black people to this day. Again, the prophecies of Nefertiti, it says, a strange bird will breed in the Delta Marsh, having made its nest beside the people having let it approach by default. It's saying that we allowed them to come into the Delta. Now what happens after we allow these Eurasians to come into Africa? They say all happiness has vanished. The land is bowed down in distress owing to those feeders, Eurasians who roam the land. Enemies have appeared in the east. Eurasians have come down into Kemet. That's Kemet, the land of black people. So they're telling you what happens. You let them come in. What did they do? They wreak destruction and havoc among the black people, just as they've done to this day, as they are still on stolen land. Kemet? He says, then a king will come from the south, Ameni, the justified by name, son of a woman of Taseti, child of the interior of Nechin. He will take the white crown, he will wear the red crown. He will join the 2 mighty ones. Eurasians will fall to his sword, Libyans will fall to his flame. Here we're talking about the Gaddafi type who had already invaded North Africa. One will build the walls of the ruler to bar Eurasians from entering Kemet. They shall beg water as supplicants so as to let their cattle drink. Then order will return to its seat while chaos is driven away. Now what are we saying from all of this? We're saying that not only did the people recognize that they were black, all of their interrelations with people to the south and southwestern Eurasians were based on self-preservation. We know we're black and we know we have enemies right at our doorstep. We better come together. So that's ancient Pan-Afrikanism, and that's the exact same context in which you have modern day Pan-Afrikanism. You have people, it didn't start here on the continent, it was people in the diaspora who were still, just like in ancient times, being lynched, being murdered, being raped, being tarred and feathered. And guess what? They said, you know what? We have to come together on what we have in common against a common enemy. Kemet? 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 All right, so I'll share one more with you and then we'll close. So he says, I made the road walking north. I'll reach the walls of the ruler, built to keep out Eurasians and to crush the sand-faring Bedouins. So again, they built walls in order to keep them out. Now, it wasn't until the time of Djibouti mess about 3,000 years ago that policy was reversed and we started to allow the Eurasians to come in. And we know what happened after that, because look at the context of North Africa now. Now when we talk about the land of black people, we're only talking about sub-Saharan Africa. So I hope this was at least a brief introduction. We've given you some text. We've given you lots of things. So when people start talking about Pan-Afrikanism, I don't want you to allow them to only talk about black people coming together since 1900. We've done this every single time we were faced with a common enemy and a common threat. Kemet! Kemet! Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badley Cambon. Yeah, we don't need no wars amongst us. Yeah, we're going to wrap up pretty soon, but we're having this dance freak to give us a couple of very good, scintillating African music, and then we go for lunch. Yeah.